here at the Medical Device Summit Supplier Controls Conference, and I'm here with Dr. Chris Devine, the author of Devine Guidance, the blog on Medical Device Summit's site, and we're here talking a little bit about some of the trends that we're seeing in the industry. Chris, you were at Boston Scientific for many years in a senior level quality position. You left there, you started Devine Guidance, and now you're working with small, medium, and large-sized companies. The perspective must be different. What are you seeing now?
Well, I think the challenges in regards to the key areas like process validation and supplier quality and so forth, they're not unique to major medical device manufacturers. The smaller companies are seeing the same challenges. It's becoming even more interesting with all of this outsourcing outside of the United States. So I'm seeing the creation of a lot of virtual medical device companies where they retain the ownership of the IP. The management team is here, but all of the manufacturing is being offshore. And for these companies to try to get their hands wrapped around that from a regulatory standpoint, it's difficult. Because the FDA is going to hold these small companies to the same standards. I mean, at the end of the day, you cannot offload your regulatory responsibility to your suppliers and contractors. Mm-hmm. You retain that responsibility, and the FDA is going to hold you to task.
Mm-hmm. With you were talking about the smaller companies, these virtual companies. Medical Device Summit plans on addressing some of the needs of companies trying to bring their products to market faster through a conference called Speed to Market later this year. What are you seeing, or what advice can you give companies on how to compress the regulatory approval process, or what kind of strategies would you advise them on in terms of they've got a promising product that's not gone through the regulatory approval process, but they're trying to attract capital, they're trying to attract investments. They talk to you, what type of advice would you give them?
Good question. I always tell the folks to make sure you commence the entire process with effective design control. The design controls that the FDA is now looking at, they're wanting to see the design history file. They're doing a thorough review of the design history file. So it's much more than 20 years ago when you could get away with making that proverbial napkin drawing, handing it to a supplier and doing the work. Now they want to see effective design controls, design inputs, design outputs, validation, and so forth. And they're also focusing on the manufacturing, the process piece. So if you do a very good job with the overall design and development, and then you follow up with a very robust process validation, I think you're okay. It'll may not result in an expedited review, but I think it'll reduce the number of questions that typically come out of the review process. And that's not only for the FDA, it's outside of the United States as well when you're working with your notified bodies.
Have you seen more and more companies go for the CE mark simultaneously as they apply for approval here in the States?
I've seen it's a mixed bag. There are companies that are located outside of the U.S. They have a registered U.S. agent. They're targeting clinical trials outside of the U.S. because for a Class 2 device, speed to market seems a little bit easier going through either the MDD, IVDD, or the AIMDD. a lot of acronyms.
Alphabet soup.
Whereas there's a little bit of frustration or ongoing frustration with the FDA's 510K process. Something that used to take 2 months, 3 months is now taking 6 months and longer. So that said, I think outside of the U.S., if you have a very good notified body you're comfortable working with, I mean, I always suggest taking that route first.
Great. Well, it's coming up on 2 years now that you've been writing for Medical Device Summit with a very successful weekly blog, Devine Guidance, and you've built up a fairly loyal readership. The current series that you've been covering is IVD. What do you see? What topics do you see coming up in 2012?
Well, I think the IVDD for the European market is quite significant. There are a number of changes coming up in regards to the classification of IVDDs. There is this Annex 2 of the directive where they have two lists, List A, List B. Most of my clients come to me and say, Dr. Devine, what in the heck is a List A device? What in the heck is a List B device? To complicate things, they are now talking about adding two more lists. There's going to be a List A, B, C, and D. And then A, which used to be the highest level, a Class 3, is going to become a Level D, or from List D. So it's going to turn the directive upside down. So there's some challenges there. And I think the notified bodies in preparation for that, companies like BSI, they're actually putting on webinars and training and so forth. So their customer base isn't caught off guard when these changes occur.
Right. You're a prolific writer, and we appreciate the efforts that you've made on Medical Device Summit. You've now published your second book. What's the third book going to be?
Well, that's between you and me. We have to talk about what the next series of articles is going to be. I'm actually going to tackle the IVDD next. And then we had talked about maybe doing the active implantable device for Europe. Or, maybe it's time to focus a little more on Asia, maybe Japan and Ordinance 169, or the Chinese regulations.
Great.
Well, whatever the readers want, we'll deliver.
Well, we appreciate all the input and support that you provided Medical Device Summit, and look forward to continuing to publish your articles and provide the information, valuable information that you're providing the industry through Medical Device Summit. Thanks,
Thank
Chris.
you. I love